Ladies and gentlemen, we have hit another milestone for the podcast. This is the Michael Grabner episode of the Behind the Net podcast. Yes, I figured out a number this time, and I can't think of any other players number 40. Can you think of any?
Not off the top of my head right now. I don't know why, but
I'm sure there's a basketball player who has number 40.
I don't know. Actually, it's not coming up to the top of my head.
Okay.
But anyways, yeah, welcome back to the Behind the Net podcast. As always, we're your hosts, Matthew and
Michael. How's it going, guys?
Awesome. So, yes, episode 40. It's been crazy. We've done more episodes officially, I think, in quarantine than we did when we were doing it in person.
That's a really good point. I think we have. Any one of the listeners who've been listening to us for a long time, just do the research to confirm with us when exactly was the last, the exact number, but I'm sure it's bigger.
I think the whole quarantine podcast thing started around episode 17 or 18, something like that. And also I did just think of a player who wore number 40.
Go for it.
Garrett Sparks.
I should have known that was coming.
Just thinking of Leafs, but yeah, just that.
I see. Okay.
But anyways, so back to this week's episode. Of course, last week was kind of a different episode there. We're recording on Wednesday, so we are 1 week removed from the NBA players strike on the league, and they initially they didn't know when we recorded it last week. We didn't know when they were going to resume, and they did resume play. Ultimately, it was the players' decisions, and yeah. So NBA is back. We have a bit to talk about there, and we have a bit to talk about how other sports. We know the baseball took a break as well in solidarity, but I remember last week we were talking about how hockey didn't take a break. And before we talk about any other topics, like we have a lot planned for this week, Michael, I want to know your thoughts on, last week we said that the NHL not taking, a stand and not taking that night off. It wasn't a good look at all. It wasn't a good thing. We wanted to see the NHL, be there to support the Black Lives Matter movement and be there to support
Absolutely.
Their fellow athletes in the NBA. And we wanted them to take the night off. They ended up taking the next 2 nights off in solidarity. So I want to know what were your thoughts on that?
Well, the first thing I want to emphasize, and I think what people sometimes forget, is that these 2 pauses, 2 days of pause that the NHL got, was driven by the players. And it's similar to the NBA, where it was the players that were the ones behind the boycotts and the games being postponed. It wasn't because the NBA said, oh, okay, we'll do it. They were their hands were forced by the players. And I think that's one thing that people following hockey need to understand. It's that these players are taking more of an interest in these social issues. And I think that's a good thing, because it's important that these players recognize the world around them and be able to provide commentary, because they have such a large platform, but also to support the Black Lives Matter movement, which has become a huge pressing issue these last few months. It's more so than ever before. And the fact, it was obviously frustrating that they continued to play while the NBA, the WNBA, MLB, soccer, all that stuff kept just decided to stop. It would have been nice for them to join suit and pause, but I'm glad that they were able to pause the games when they did, and they are making. I'd say this is the best we've seen the NHL respond after that game that they played, because you saw they made some really eye-opening statements, in the sense that you've never really seen the NHL do something like that before, right?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I definitely think it was big step. I think at first glance, a lot of people thought, the NHL was it was looking like the NHL was kind of being forced into it after initially making the decision to not take that first night off. But when we found out more information, we basically found out that it was at the players' hands, the whole decision to take nights off. And I think that's a very honorable thing, especially in hockey, which we talked about. It's a predominantly white sport, and we've talked about it so much that these hockey players have chosen to ignore these issues because it just hasn't pertained to their lives. So it's been something that they can easily put aside. And right now, even though we've been saying it for months that this isn't something that they can just put aside, and even though they have been putting it aside, I think it is a big step that finally these players themselves kind of took the initiative to really learn more about it and take that stand themselves without having to be, maybe there was a little pressure from, different leagues and different athletes and that overall pressure, but it's a big step for the players themselves to take that step rather than the NHL kind of forcing it upon them. So I think that shows a lot of growth, and I think it's very important.
Yeah,
for sure.
And one thing to mention before you continue is that the NHL cannot be let off the hook because of how they were able to respond after playing those games on, what was it, Wednesday night? Okay. Because there's a really good piece from one of our TLN colleagues, Marcia Joseph, called "This Is Not the End." I think it pretty much perfectly represents what I'm about to say next, is that the NHL still has a lot of work to do, and they can't just use what they did after all the boycotts as like, we did our part, we're good, we can stop now. The work continues now. You need to keep going. You need to continue to show that you're not just doing it because it was a popular thing to do. You're going to do it because you genuinely believe it. You stand by the statement of Black Lives Matter, and you want to help make the sport all inclusive. The statement, hockey is for everyone. Well, if you want to make it true, then you got to keep up the work that you've been doing the last couple of days, because that's how people are going to feel comfortable watching the sport.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Exactly that. So yeah, I think it was nice to see, and we'll see how things progress from there. It's definitely a big step. But moving on, we have a lot planned in this episode, a lot of topics to discuss, and I think we should go through them a little quicker than usual because there are a lot. First off on our list, though, we do have to address our Mario Kart 8 tournament that we've been talking about, a few episodes ago, and I think we've made the decision to postpone it indefinitely. There just wasn't enough interest for it and enough signups. We got a few signups, but not enough for a whole tournament. And of course, people are getting more busy now that the world is kind of opening up. But again, if you're listening and you would like to see a Mario Kart 8 tournament actually happen and we can run it, just let us know. Tweet us at either one of us or even the podcast account and let us know that you do want to see a Mario Kart 8 tournament. I think we just need that interest.
Yes, absolutely. And don't think of it as like we're putting it on the shelf and we're never going to touch it again. We do want to do the tournament at some point. But again, as Matthew said, it's going to come from you guys. If you really want this thing to happen, please give us a shout from our Twitter accounts and the Behind the Net podcast Twitter account. If enough people are interested in doing it, then we'll make it happen.
For sure. Before we get into the news of the week and the discussions of the week, Michael, how are you doing this week?
I've been good, man. Work has been pretty hectic. Just today, I woke up at 6:30 for a shift. But you know what? I can't complain. Work's been good. I got the spike ball set finally.
Nice,
and I got some
nice.
games this week.
I've been wanting to get a spike ball set. I saw you get it and you put it on your Instagram story, and honestly, I think I still want to get it. I was thinking it might be a little too late. Like, I kind of regret not getting it, earlier in summer. Because now it's going to be fall, and those kind of summer activities are not as popular, when it's colder outside. But yeah. I don't know. I'm still debating it. It would be fun. At least I can get some fun in this month.
Oh yeah.
Well, we still have a lot of free time on our hands.
Just a little bit of a if you guys are interested in buying it, Canadian Tire sells them for $80. I promise you, if you see one in the store, snag it up because it won't. Those things sell like hotcakes.
So yeah, I definitely will look into that. Or have you played it yet?
I'm gonna play it probably tonight, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, speaking of games, I'm gonna be playing. And just yesterday, I got some things that arrived from eBay. Two Simpsons games actually. One was the
Ooh,
Simpsons game, and the other is Road Rage. Both on the
okay.
PS2.
Nice. Um, yeah. I haven't played either, but I have played another Simpsons game, which I'll bring up really quickly. But I do know both of those games are very good, especially the Simpsons game, like the movie, kind of based on the movie one. Have you
Yeah.
played it before, or is this going to be your first time playing through those games?
I have played it before. I had it originally on the 360, but for whatever reason, I just gave it away or so
Oh
like brought
man.
it to eBay or something.
Mm-hmm.
So recently I was like, man, I really wish I still had that game. So then I just found it on PS2. Ah, perfect. I'll pick that one up.
It's fun. It is fun. I've seen a lot of videos. I haven't played myself yet, but even during that time, I think when I was younger, I wanted to pick it up. It looks like a really fun
It's
game.
a good game.
hmm
Yeah, you should definitely pick it up if you find it.
While we're on the topic of Simpsons games, though, have you played Hit and Run before?
Oh yeah, man. I
Simpsons
still
Hit and
have my
Run.
original copy of on the GameCube.
Nice. I have my original copy on PlayStation 2. That is hands down my favorite Simpsons game, and it is amazing.
Factual
It's just
statement
it's
there.
just so fun. It's like a kid version of Grand Theft Auto, but it's
Oh yeah.
actually interesting. Like even I bet I actually want to play it again. Maybe I'll play that this week, but it's it's definitely so much fun, and I love how when we talk about video games on the podcast, like it makes me like crave to play a certain game again.
Man, me too. I have to. Speaking of which, how have you been, man?
I've been good. I've been chilling, watching sports, just kind of using my free time again to spend time with family, things like that. Yeah, been writing a few things, trying to come up with things to write. Obviously, we're in the off season right now, and yeah, that's pretty much how it's been. My wisdom teeth, I think, have healed up, like my wisdom teeth removal, so that's good. Um,
It's crazy. The last week when we did that podcast, it didn't or was it a couple weeks ago when yeah, it was with Mike Stevens, I think,
hmm
where you just had your wisdom teeth removed, and I couldn't really tell that you just gotten them surgically removed. So
uh,
if you guys in the audience could tell a difference, let me know because maybe my earring's not good.
Honestly, I don't think it caused that much of a difference. I think I was able to speak pretty clearly. I just think after we did the podcast, I think my mouth was a little sore, but that's all. um, but yeah, I think it's time now we get right into this week's topics, and I think the pressing story of the week, especially in Toronto sports, are the Toronto Raptors, and they
Yep.
started their series against the Boston Celtics on Sunday. It was originally supposed to be last Thursday, but because of the boycotts, it was pushed back to Sunday. So, I mean, I'm just gonna recap it super quickly. Game 1 was pretty bad on the Raptors end. They took the loss against the Celtics, and then Game 2, I mean, I was talking to you. It was yesterday. I was talking to you after the game about it, and the Raptors obviously they lost, so they're down. They're currently down 2-0 against the Celtics in the series, and there were a lot of errors that the Raptors were making on the defensive end, especially in Game 1. They were really struggling offensively. They were struggling to hit shots. Like the players that you'd look to hit shots, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Pascal Siakam, they were just not hitting shots. And one of the bright spots was Serge Ibaka. And the fact is that, these two teams are very well matched up. And we've talked about that when we had Vivek Jacob on last week on the podcast. But it really is looking like Boston has taken control over the game. And they're looking a lot more comfortable than the Raptors. The Raptors yesterday in Game 2 had a lot more. They were looking a lot better, but still you could tell that they still hadn't figured out Boston completely. Whereas Boston had a bit more control over the pace of the game. And the Raptors ended up making a lot of errors. We'll talk about that soon, but they ended up losing to the Celtics by only 3 points in game 2. So I want to hear from you. What do you think the Raptors' downfalls were in both of those games?
Well, I wasn't unfortunately able to watch game 1 in its entirety. I was definitely busy that night, but I did get to see game 2. And I have to say, the first half, and I guess maybe parts of the third quarter, the Raptors played as well as you could have expected them to play against a good team in the Celtics. And like I said before the series started, this is going to be the Raptors' biggest test of the playoffs so far because the Celtics play them really well. If you remember the Christmas Day game back in God knows how long ago.
I was there. It was crazy. It was unfortunate for Raptors fans, of course. But yeah.
If you want to know why this Celtics team is going to do the Raptors fits, if you remember that game, that's a good place to start. Just the Raptors, I think what it really comes down to is they were putting up uncharacteristic misses. They were getting a lot of good looks, but the balls weren't going in. You've probably heard on the commentary, they're forced into these jump shots that they're not as good at taking. But at the same time, the Celtics also had a lot of misses during that stretch of the third quarter where like no one's getting anything to go. But if you think of it this way, the Raptors lost by 3. Despite a miraculous run by Marcus Smart, of all people, hitting 5 consecutive threes, they still were within 3 points of winning that game. That should tell you that as bad as it was in game 2 in that fourth quarter, this Raptors team can still match up well with the Celtics. What it comes down to, it basically the same thing for the Celtics on the other end. You got to get on a run. You also have to play the way you want to play. You can't let the other team dictate the pace offensively and defensively. Because if the Raptors want to play well, they're going to be able to do their man-to-man coverage in the defensive end, and they're able to get their good open looks. They can't just force up a shot when they need to get something going. Just get into position. You never know what's going to happen. If this Raptors team is going to fall down 3-0, then best believe their season's done. Because game 3 is critical. They have to win that game. I think we can't stress that enough.
For sure. I want to bring us back to kind of rewind us to last year's playoffs, actually. Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks. The Raptors were down 2-0 against the Bucks, and we know what happened next. They won 4 straight and took it in 6 games. And a lot of Raptors fans and everyone is kind of pointing to that series as a reminder, as don't get down yet. It's still possible, and I definitely think it's still possible for this team to come back. It is just a little harder because this is definitely a different looking team. I think everyone can see that. Obviously, because there is no Kawhi Leonard on this team, who took a lot of a huge chunk of the load offensively and defensively for the Raptors, and he really was that number one guy who you can look towards when you need buckets, when you need play in tight, especially in the clutch. And I think the big question mark that has kind of rose during the last 2 games was, is Pascal Siakam really capable of being a number one option?
I think that's a big question too.
And I have to ask you that. Let me give my opinion first. All throughout the season, he definitely looked like a number one option. He was hitting shots, late in games when the Raptors needed it. I think he hit a couple game winners, and he definitely, was at the top of his game throughout the season. And definitely, there's a number of factors that play into it, but his bubble play, once he entered the bubble, has not been on par with how he was pre-bubble, pre-pandemic, basically. And of course, there's a number of different reasons for this. Pascal Siakam stayed in Toronto during quarantine. He quarantined here in Toronto, and he didn't have access to, a hoop. He didn't really have access to training and keeping up, keeping himself physically up to par with how he was. And then I believe when the facilities finally opened, he wasn't one of the first people there. correct me if I'm wrong there, but it's just a number of factors there. And you can see he's been struggling in the bubble. And I don't want to place all the blame on there, but yeah, as far as the playoffs go, he's definitely not playing like a number one option. And that's the problem that the Raptors have right now. You know, in the fourth quarter last night in game 2, he was only able to hit 2 free throws, and that's it. 2 points, 2 free throws in the fourth quarter. And let me remind you of the turnover that really costed the Raptors late in the game with about 13 seconds left in the fourth quarter, down 3 points. He unfortunately, that's a debatable call. I'm not going to get into that, but basically, yeah, it was called out of bounds when Pascal Siakam caught the ball, and they ruled that he stepped out of bounds. I mean, I looked at the replay. It's very close. It's basically stepped right on the line. We'll get into that shortly about another topic with officiating, but I want to know, do you think Pascal Siakam is a number one option here, or what do you think the Raptors really have to do? Could we see another player have to, step in as the number one option, or do you think the Raptors are screwed because, Pascal Siakam, unless he plays as a number one option, the Raptors won't find success?
That's really the ultimate question. That's the $1 million topic right here. If we look back at last year, what was the key difference between last year's team and this year's team down 2-0? Kawhi Leonard. He's not here anymore. So you don't have this marquee player, like MV caliber player, to help get you out of a jam. That's what's going to be the big test for Siakam in game 3. He, on the NBA's website, was number 7 for candidates for the MVP. Guess who was right behind him at number 8? Jayson Tatum. And on Basketball Reference, he's nowhere to be seen. So what I'm getting at here is if Siakam really wants to prove that he is ready to take that next step and become the face of the Toronto Raptors offense, even in spite of all the potential setbacks and in spite of the lack of opportunities to train, if you are the face of the franchise and you have this uncanny ability and natural God-given talent to will your team to victory, then Siakam will be able to find a way to do that. If he can't, then the Raptors have to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that they don't have a good enough roster and that they are going to have to make some more changes. That's really all it comes down to. Siakam, I think Siakam has what it takes to become a number one option. We saw that during the regular season, and I can't even remember how close he was to potentially winning the MVP award if he's even still in the conversation for it. But the fact that he was even there to begin with speaks a lot about his development. And I think the Raptors management knew not to let him go last offseason in that trade that would have kept Kawhi Leonard or potentially bringing Paul George to Toronto. Remember that? Basically, what I'm getting at here, Game 3 is going to be one of the most important games in franchise history, because how that game goes, even if the Raptors somehow come back from that or make a series out of down 3-0, there's no way the Raptors are winning that. And basically, the Raptors have a lot of questions that they need to answer. Some really tough ones too. So they have to win this game because the future of the franchise depends on it.
And I mean, when we're talking about Pascal Siakam being the number one option, I agree with you completely there that it really does fall on him if he's able to step up. It kind of comes down to that. But, I think maybe, again, we've talked about it all season. This season is kind of the wild card season. No expectations on this Toronto Raptors teams that the fans have put on them. It really was a wild card season. And I think when you think about all that, I think the expectations, I think Raptors fans are holding, I think even we are holding really high expectations for them right now because they've found so much success. And I think we should take those expectations down a notch because let's not forget, Pascal Siakam was never a number one option. He's become an assumed number one option because Kawhi Leonard left. And that's it. It was, but it's, as I tweeted yesterday, it's really big shoes to fill. When you think about it, Kawhi Leonard is a top 5 player, even top 3 player, arguably, in the league. And, just because he left, everyone kind of assumed the next best player, Pascal Siakam, would be able to be an assumed number one option rather than thinking he is a number two option and the Raptors still need that number one option. Everyone just kind of assumed he was a number one option. And again, as I said, he has played like a number one option, but this is his first real playoffs as a number one option. Let's not forget, he's only been playing basketball for 7 years now. When he was around like 18 years old only. And on top of that, he's only been a regular starter. This is his second season as a regular starter. And this is his first season as even an all-star. So just to assume him as being a number one option right away, again, his ceiling is still high, but I think you can't fault him for just not, filling in for Kawhi Leonard's shoes, and they're big shoes to fill right away. And so I don't know if you'd say it's their ultimate downfall, but definitely if he wants to show up, especially in this series, which I'm going to go into now with this next topic, but if he wants to show up, this is his time to shine. Yeah. And the added layer onto that, and it comes in back to my second question, is he's going against Jayson Tatum, who, everyone's been drawing comparisons between the two all season long. And honestly, as we spoke about last week, even I was right there. I thought, it was super close. But now that we're seeing them head to head, Jayson Tatum is better. He is playing better than Pascal Siakam, at least right now. But let's not forget that a big factor when determining if a player is better than another player is if they can, bring it when it matters most, and that's the playoffs. And Jayson Tatum has played exceptionally well. He scored 34 points in Game 2 to lead the Celtics, to help lead them to a victory. And Pascal Siakam only scored 17, and he's been struggling. He's even struggling to put up 20 points in a game when he should be the leading scorer night in and night out. And you can see it. You can see how he struggled in the fourth quarter. And Jayson Tatum is it's just crazy. I watch him, and he has such he has so many tools on his tool belt to he has so many skills. So yeah, I want to know, what do you think about that comparison, Jayson Tatum and Pascal Siakam?
I still think it's fair. I still think they're pretty even. And we can't just judge two games on defining the argument of, Tatum is for sure better. Statistically right now he is. But does that mean for years he's going to obviously be the better player than Siakam? Who's to say? Basketball is a strange sport in the sense that when it looks like things are going to be stable for a long time, something will change. Unless, of course, the players themselves change. This is not the 90s basketball where Michael Jordan was an inevitability. We're not talking about the early 2000s where Shaq and Kobe were an inevitability, or the 2010s where LeBron and the Heat
and the Golden State Warriors
and LeBron and the Cavs and the Golden State Warriors were an inevitability. We're at a point right now where we're at a crossroads. We don't even know who is the face of the NBA, as in who's the team that consistently finds success and gets themselves in position to win championships. We're not at that stage yet. That can still be determined. And I think at the end of the day, Siakam can still prove that he can match up against Tatum. It has to altogether come from him. Remember, Masai put a lot of trust in Siakam by not trading him and letting Kawhi and Danny Green walk in free agency last summer. That says a lot. If Masai trusts you that much to become the face of the franchise, you have to live up to those expectations. And like we were saying earlier, Siakam has lived up to them in the regular season, not so in the playoffs so far. But if there's any chance for him to prove that he can become the face of this team and become the face of this team for a long time, it starts with Game 3. If he doesn't show it, I don't know how Masai is going to react. But like I said, there's going to be some tough decisions that have to be made.
100%, exactly that. Again, I can make up excuses for Siakam, and I think they're reasonable excuses, and his ceiling is still high. But exactly that, we have to look towards Game 3 and see, can he pick things up now that the Raptors truly need it? This is the time to play your heart out, and we have to see if Pascal Siakam can do that. And while we wrap up, talk about this series, I do want to talk about, what do you think about the officiating? Because that's been a kind of a controversial topic. About, the officiating was pretty bad against Toronto. One thing that stuck out, especially in game 2, was there were no calls against Toronto, against the Celtics in the first half at all. The Raptors had 0 free throws in the whole first half, and that's almost unheard of, to have 0 free throws in 2 quarters. Meanwhile, the Boston Celtics had 9 free throws. And when you're not going to the line really often at all, it is a big red flag, not just on the team but on the officiating as well. Mm-hmm. And then the big officiating problem that was pretty apparent was the Pascal Siakam out of bounds call late in the fourth quarter. Again, it was super close to the line. Honestly, on video, it sometimes even looks like he wasn't out of bounds. So it's very controversial, very debatable. But I've seen the screen caps go around on Twitter, and I believe it was Jaylen Brown. There was a moment in the game where Jaylen Brown was clearly out of bounds and it didn't get called. And I think it just, again, I don't want to use the officiating as a crutch or as an excuse for the Raptors' loss, because as you said, it was a 3-point game. The Raptors were in it, and simply put, they had a 12-point lead even in the third quarter, and they blew that. So simply put, they did not play well down the stretch when it was needed, and they let it slip away to the Celtics. So it's not even the officiating's fault, but officiating does play a big part. So I want to know what your thoughts on that are.
I'm kind of feeling the same way that you do. Obviously, the officiating was a little bit spotty, definitely questionable. But first of all, the NBA's last 2-minute report confirms that all the calls from that game were correct. Mm-hmm. As much as whether or not you agree with that, that's up to you. But that's what the NBA decided. We can argue it. I'd say that maybe some of the calls should have been looked at, especially the out of bounds calls, which is something that is very interesting to look at, and something that I think a lot of teams it's the kind of things that more often than not usually get overlooked. But when it's in situations like this where a game is so close, it's so frustrating that has to be one of the things we look at. But again, remember what I was talking about earlier, how this Raptors team, instead of their struggles in the fourth quarter, and also uncanny ability to not go to the free throw line, and the Celtics' God-given talents of playing clean basketball. Obviously that was a joke. Mm-hmm. What was I getting at here? The Raptors still managed to keep it lose the game within 3 points. That tells you that if the Raptors had a few more free throw attempts, maybe the score looks a little different. But again, like you said, you can't rely on the refs to help get you back in the game. Mm-hmm. You have to create your own offense. And what I think is the bigger tell is that stretch of the third quarter and the start of the fourth quarter, where the Raptors struggled mightily to get shots off, getting shots in good positions, and they missed. That, to me, was the difference maker. If the Raptors hit even half of the shots during that stretch, they win that game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, yet again, it's not all on the officiating. Of course, good officiating helps both teams in the end, but the Raptors let it slip away, and they have a lot to do. Before I ask the next question, this actually just happened. Adrian Wojnarowski just tweeted that the NBA is fining Celtics Marcus Smart for $5,000 for flopping in Game 2. I want to know just your quick thoughts on that. I mean, for me, I think it's definitely good because, I mean, if anything, we're talking about officiating. What a coincidence that this happens, because I think it does mean the NBA is kind of looking at it with a closer eye, and we can just hope that Game 3 will be officiated a little more tightly and a little more fair for both teams. But I want to know your thoughts super quickly.
I think it just comes down to that. We hope that in Game 3, the officiating is a little bit more balanced, in the sense that both teams are getting their calls. I think that's just really what it comes down to in sports in general. You hope that the calls are fair for both sides, that one team is not getting treatment over the other. And I think that this is one way that shows, hey, we messed up in this game. we're going to make it right in a sense by starting to find one of the players. Hopefully that means I'm guessing what's going to happen is if the Raptors didn't get that many calls like in their favor, I'm guessing the NBA is going to be more fair and they're going to be calling a lot more stuff on the Celtics. I don't know. Something tells me that's what's going to happen because there always is that thing in sports where they always try to balance things out. It's like, oh, we were too harsh on you guys. We're going to make it fair by being harsh on them this time.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, again, I mean, the $5,000 fine, $5,000 isn't a big penalty for these millionaire athletes, but I think it does show that the league is kind of setting some more eyes onto that series and onto the officiating in that series, and I think it just gives a little hope that they'll be more watchful in games 3 and 4.
And think of it this way: the game was that close that potentially a flop that call that was called on him could have made a difference. If that was not called, then maybe the game is tied and they go to overtime.
Exactly.
I think that's the big thing people have to recognize too. It's not like, oh, well, they feel bad. Let's just hand him $5,000 because you're up 2-0. No, it's more that was a critical play. It should have been called correctly. We're going to make sure we recognize that we made a mistake. Simple as that.
Exactly. And let's just hope they don't make any further mistakes. But
knock on wood.
Knock on wood. But we still have a lot of things to talk about. Obviously this week the Raptors Celtics series is at the forefront of sports news right now. But I do have to ask you, what adjustments need to be made to get back in the series?
Again, like I was saying earlier in my other answers, it's got to come down from shot selection. The Raptors were simply given took too many shots when there was a bit too much coverage in their way. And that's just not good basketball, especially for a team like the Raptors. Like I can look at this entire team and I can say these guys can get things done offensively. There's no telling when they will go off offensively. Like Lowry, Van Fleet, Siakam, Ibaka, Gasol, all those guys, they can put the ball in the basket. They just need to make sure they do it consistently and they get their open looks. They're a good team as they can move the ball very well. If you can get to the ball to open looks, you'll have a much better time in Game 3. Because in Game 2, the Raptors, I think, like I said, that stretch in the third quarter is going to define the whole game, for me at least. Because the fact that they were not getting anything going and they were struggling to find different approaches is what's, for me, has to be addressed in Game 3. Because if they can't fix their shot selection, who's to say that the Celtics are going to go on another run in Game 3? And they could potentially take a commanding 3-0 lead.
Exactly. And I'd argue you have to do the exact same on the opposite end and stop giving too many open looks. You know, Marcus Smart, he did catch fire in the fourth quarter and was just nailing threes, but a lot of them were open looks. And they really need to stay, uptight offensively. And defensively. And the Raptors are one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. We know this. But it seems like, they really have to watch that, especially in Game 2. That was more apparent. And I really think they need to drive to the basket more. Again, going back to the calls. Yeah, the Raptors got 0 free throws in the first half of Game 2. But, I think they could have still went to the line more and drove to the basket and tried to get those calls. I think that's a good way because clearly their shooting their shooting, especially beyond the arc, wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And I think getting those closer looks would be way more valuable. And I definitely want to talk to you about the bright spots on the team. Serge Ibaka and especially OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby played amazingly in Game 2. And we've seen his growth, all season, but I think he really topped it in Game 2. And I mean, I hate to say it, but he really looked like the number one option for the team there, especially in Game 2. I mean that in a positive sense because he's full of potential. So how would you want to see him be utilized, I think?
I think it'd be a good idea to give him some more opportunities in Game 3 because he definitely played it well. He was one of the bright spots offensively. And I think he was a big part of why the team was able to stay in it. So why not give him a bigger leash? Why not see what else he can do? If you think that he can be a big part of this team's future, and I think the Raptors certainly think he can, why not give him more opportunities to succeed? I think, if anything, you're going to be helping his development, and you're going to give this team a better chance to win the game. So why the hell not?
Exactly. And I also want to ask you, how do you think they should, like the Raptors should dig deeper into their bench a little? Of course, I mean, I think they should, especially, I mean, I know a lot of fans want it. Obviously there's obvious reasons, but you know, Mr. 99, Matt Thomas, a lot of people want to see him get minutes, and you know, I would down the stretch. I think he can definitely get you those buckets. Again, he's such a great shooter. But you know, his defensive game just isn't there. And, but I definitely would like to see him, you know, play in the third or the fourth, get a few minutes, you know, get his legs going. I think he'll be really valuable in games 3 and 4, especially game 4. Let's say the Raptors do face elimination. Offensively, the Raptors are struggling, and he is, you know, a big help on the offensive end. But definitely his big issue is defense. So you really have to kind of play protective there, but I would like to see that.
Absolutely. And I think Matt Thomas would definitely be a big help, but I think the bench as a whole can provide the spark. We saw that during the Nets series where the Raptors bench outscored, what was it, the starting lineup or their bench by a huge margin. Like, it was crazy.
Game 4, I think, was the NBA record for most bench points. 100 bench points. Yeah.
That's just crazy. And that tells me that this Raptors bench can provide the spark if the starting lineup is struggling. They have options. And I think that's a good thing in basketball. So why not give the bench more chances? If Siakam continues to struggle in game 3, because you know that the series is on the line at that point, give the bench a chance. Why the hell not?
I think we're seeing Nick Nurse, who we know Nick Nurse has been a defense first coach, even though he came from, you know, when he was under Dwayne Casey, he was working on the team's offense and reshaping that. I think as head coach, he's kind of taking this team more with a defensive approach. And yeah, I think we have to look here that to get some more offense going, you might have to give up a little defense. And I think that might actually be beneficial, because if they do need to dig deeper into their bench and to get, you know, some offense going, so be it. I think we, you know, especially going into games 3 and 4, it's do or die. I think those risks have to be taken. I think Nick Nurse is a risk taker, so we'll definitely have to see what he does there.
Really, all it comes down to is basically this Raptors team can still make it back in this series, but it starts with a good performance in game 3. As long as they're able to get their shots up, Siakam can play better than he did in game 2 and games 1, and you get a good performance out of your bench, then who knows what this Raptors team can do in game 3. But also, don't give the Celtics easy looks, like you said. Don't let the Celtics play the way that they want to play, because in that fourth quarter, they were looking to shoot threes. The Raptors should have tried to stop it as soon as the first one went in. Or obviously, ideally, you'd want to see them not make any. But after that first one goes in and they're trying to do it again, you should be able to stop it. It shouldn't have been that easy. You know what I mean?
And it was really hard because, I mean, Marcus Smart, he just caught fire. Like, yeah, he got a lot of open looks, but a lot of them were contested. And I mean, you can't stop those. You know, you can't really do much when it is, you know, you do contest it well and it just happens to go in. Okay, big deal, you know, focus on the next one. But he was consistently making it, and I think the Raptors had to change up something on the defensive end there.
And I think that's just really what it's going to come down to. As long as those things can play out and the Raptors don't let the Celtics dictate the pace of play, then I think this Raptors team can most definitely get back in this series and make it 2-1.
Exactly.
What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I know everyone's saying look to the Milwaukee series last season, and that definitely was a completely different team. But I think if we learned with anything with this Raptors team is, you know, don't give up yet. They're not a team that gives up early. Even if they're down at a deficit, you know, they find ways to come back. And I think again, we've talked about it, but I think it definitely goes back to those starters have to find it within themselves to catch fire in game 3. But with that, I think obviously the Raptors were the big topic of the week in sports, so that's why we spent a lot of time there. I want to wrap up the NBA playoff talk with a couple other things we've seen around the league. First, I don't know if you caught Game 7 of the Nuggets and the Jazz last night. Man, that series was so good. The Nuggets obviously took it in 7 games. Jamal Murray, our Canadian pride and joy, he's been insane, and I know he did go down early yesterday and still played. Injured. It looked like he injured his leg, but he was okay. And he caught fire when it mattered most, within the fourth quarter. And it was a back and forth game. They only won by 2 points. Donovan Mitchell was shooting lights out as well. But I want to talk about Jamal Murray because, of course, he is Canadian. He does have those ties, and I think a lot of Canadians are going to be looking towards him now as one of their favorite players. I know I do. I think he's awesome.
Me too.
He's the man right now. 50 points in was it Game 6 or Game 5?
One of those two, yeah.
50 points. He really, and I mean, they overcame. The Jazz blew a 3-1 lead, simply put. But the Nuggets literally led by Jamal Murray. Of course, Jokic is the leader of that team, but Jamal Murray, I think, is becoming a superstar in this league.
Me too.
One of the top point guards, yeah.
I really loved the Twitter reaction towards the end of Game 6, going crazy after every bucket he made. It was one of the most enjoyable things I've seen on Twitter all year. I can't remember a time, other than maybe the Leafs Game 4 comeback win, where Twitter was that exciting. Like, it's so much fun to watch Jamal Murray really come into his own. And just like his development as I can't remember where he was drafted in the first round.
Yeah, he was the first rounder, but yeah, definitely wasn't, he wasn't a top pick per se, but he's really figured things out. And I think he fits perfectly on that Denver team, and they've been competing, year after year.
You know what? On the flip side too, this is going to be a very interesting offseason for the Jazz. Like, first of all, they blew a 3-1 lead in the first round, but second, questions are going to be arising about Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and the core that they've established there. Is that team good enough? Is that team going to be able to compete for championships? I'm not so sure now. Because this season proved that they still need some more pieces.
Yeah, I mean, they even made the trade for Mike Conley in the offseason. And it doesn't look, maybe there's internal problems. We have seen reports that, after the whole pandemic kind of issue there with Rudy Gobert, kind of spreading coronavirus to Donovan Mitchell. We saw that there was some bad blood there, but they were able to get it down on the floor, and Donovan Mitchell is the centerpiece for that Jazz team. Rudy Gobert is amazing, and I really hope that there aren't chemistry issues there, but I definitely think that Utah Jazz team needs to work. They need to work on getting over that hump. I don't know if any changes are coming there, but yeah, we'll just have to see.
I want to talk about some other series that happened in the first round. First of all, the Clippers and Mavericks series, I did not expect that to be the one where the favorite was in danger of being eliminated by the underdog. I mean, that was an amazing series by the Mavs.
I have to say there's one reason for that, and that's because of the Don, Luka Doncic. Yep. That's exactly why. Insane. We didn't even get to talk about this last week or the week before, but Luka Doncic, I mean, we talked about him all season, how he's just propelled himself to MVP, to an MVP caliber talent in his second year. I really think we're seeing, I mean, it's a little too early to say that, but if he's going to play for the rest of his career at this trajectory, I think we are seeing one of the all-time greats or the emergence of an all-time great.
I think this is the debut performance of what's going to be one of the brightest stars in the NBA. You know what this reminded me of? What was it? The 2017 series between the Leafs and the Capitals, where Austin Matthews put on a show against the President's Trophy winners. Like, Luka Doncic, everyone thought, the Clippers are going to easily win this series in like 5 games, possibly even sweep. Doncic has no chance of making his presence. And Paul George was like super confident, like, we're good. We're good. This is going to be easy. No, Doncic played amazing. And this is only the beginning for him. Like you said, I can't wait to see what this guy does a few years from now once he's fully developed and figured out how to play North American style basketball. And
yeah.
Truth be told, the Clippers are still a good team. They still put up a good fight. But I think you have to wonder, is that Clippers team in trouble?
I mean, first I want to talk about the Mavs and Luka Doncic.
Of course, yeah.
Before I get to the Clippers, again, I mean, he basically set the NBA record for most averaging the most points per game in his first playoff series, in a player's first playoff series ever. So that's huge. But the fact that in his first playoff series, he really stepped up and looked like a playoff performer superstar. And how many superstars do we actually know, can't bring it when the time comes, I mean, like, we know Kawhi Leonard is one of the players who can bring it. We know Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. Those are players who have proven themselves in the clutch in playoff games. And, other superstars like Russell Westbrook, James Harden, even Chris Paul, they've struggled at times. And to see these things coming from a 20-year-old Luka Doncic, in his first playoffs, when you can already say he's a playoff performer. Of course, he doesn't have the, it's his first playoff, so I'm not going to even fault him for not going past the first round. But when you can label him like that already, like, that's a huge step as a superstar. And on top of that, I mean, I just want to mention, the game winner, his buzzer-beating game winner over, I forgot who it was over. I think it was Jackson. I forgot. But his buzzer-beating overtime winner was insane. It was right there with Kawhi Leonard's game winner. Honestly, even though that was, the first Game 7 buzzer beater winner, I think the energy and just who he was, the story and the narrative behind him, obviously with Montrezl Harrell, we've seen the back and forth between them. We've seen Morris go at it with Luka Doncic. We've seen the Clippers, he was public enemy number 1 to the Clippers, and he was able to shrug off all pressure and put up a 40-point triple-double and a buzzer-beating game winner. That's insane. That is insane.
Absolutely. And like I said, I think Luka Doncic is just getting started. This guy has what it takes to become one of the faces of the NBA. Well, I think the team itself still has to figure things out. They still need to grow, but I think the Mavs are going to be one of the scariest teams in the Western Conference for years to come. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Kristaps Porzingis was out for the last 2 games in the series, and he was ejected in Game 1. And Luka Doncic, that's his sidekick. That is his sidekick. And they're very young too, a very young pair of stars. And he showed that he is the number 1 option, and he's not scared of any pressure. So it's going to be crazy. But onto the Clippers side, yeah, it definitely looks like there's internal problems. A lot of drama we've seen with Lou Williams, leaving the bubble. That story there. Paul George has been struggling. He kind of brought it in the later half of the series. Kawhi Leonard's been great as usual. But Morris, he's been drawing a lot of controversy. I don't know if you saw Patrick Beverley. He said some really bad stuff in a players meeting. Just from left and right, that team looks like a very problematic team. But they're able to get it done simply because of the talent they have. Kawhi Leonard has not been problematic, but you have to think. I don't know what he's thinking. I know he doesn't like to have to deal with those kind of things, so I wonder what the locker room presence is like. But I think that team is getting by because they have so much talent on their team.
Absolutely. But I wonder, though, how far that talent's going to take them. Because you've seen the pictures, right, of Kawhi not looking particularly happy. Obviously we've seen some moments where he looked a little frustrated when he was with the Raptors, but nothing like we've seen this year with the Clippers. I don't think Kawhi has had a year this frustrating since his last season with the Spurs, at least for him personally. So I wonder if maybe, like you said, that there is some internal conflict between the Clippers on a team basis. But of course, that talent has brought them to the point where they were able to get past the first round, and they're able to survive a scare against the Mavs. But they're going to be up against a Nuggets team that is hungry. Jamal Murray, who's been playing excellent basketball these last few days. I'm curious if that's a series where that could go the distance, because I think that could go the distance.
I think so too. I mean, unless the Clippers can, either figure out those side controversies and those side problems, or if they could find the will to ignore it, they have some trouble there. And you got to think, how much of these, side problems are holding back the Clippers. Like if they weren't there, to what degree would the Clippers be playing? And I mean, Paul George as well has to actually become playoff P, as he dubs himself. He has to become that, and we have to see what it's like. And I mean, to Kawhi Leonard, I hope being in the sun was worth this. But yeah, we'll see. And I think we should start wrapping up the NBA playoff talk with that. But do you have anything you want to add?
I think one more series I want to look at really quickly is the Rockets and the Thunder, which is technically still the last first round series that has to be finished. And that's tonight at 9 p.m. By the time this podcast is out, you'll already know the outcome. But just going into it, just the fact that Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook are neck and neck at this point. How crazy is that?
It is crazy. I definitely think Chris Paul has been playing a lot better, even this season. He's really shown that he can bring it. He's been insane. Simply put, he's really been leading that Thunder team, as underdogs. That's the big thing. As underdogs. And, I mean, what's crazy is that, he was with James Harden. And it's crazy to see how they could have went so far. But, of course, we know that there were internal problems there. There were chemistry issues there that really held them back, and I think it's just going to be a crazy Game 7.
I definitely agree too.
I think it's anyone's game.
Really, especially the fact that it's just come down to the wire. Like it was, the Rockets were up 2-0. The Thunders were able to tie it back and forth, games 5 and 6. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the visiting team has not won a single game in this series. Am I wrong?
I have to double check that, but it sounds familiar.
Because I wonder how much the home court advantage, even though there's not really home court.
It doesn't really matter, but I don't know. Maybe there are some fans watching. I don't know if that helps these players mentally in their minds. I don't know what goes through their minds, but maybe.
Yeah, I think that's really going to come down to which team is going to show up in this game. Is going to determine the winner, and I think, given how close all the games have been, like for the Thunder, I'm gonna guess this is gonna be another close one. And like you said, it could go either way. I think the Rockets have the better team all around, and I think that I'm gonna give them the slight edge. But who knows?
I think we say that this first round of playoff basketball has been absolutely nuts. It's been really fun to watch.
It's lived up to its potential, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. But with that, I think we'll head into our next topic. We're going to switch over to hockey now. I know we've kind of taken a break from hockey. But there has been a little bit of things going on, mainly with the Leafs. A lot of trade rumors and a trade that actually went down. Kapanen was traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. To the Pittsburgh Penguins from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the Leafs actually received the 15th overall pick in this year's draft, and that was, I'll keep it simple, that was the main centerpiece of the trade, but there were other pieces. But I just want to know your quick thoughts on that trade.
I think it was a good trade. It was a trade the Leafs needed to make, in the sense that they needed a first round pick badly, and the fact that they were able to get one so close to where their actual pick is good work by Dubas. He ended up making if you think about it this way, the Marleau trade didn't work out great, even though they weren't able to make get the first overall pick, which would have been amazing. But who cares about that now? Now that they have a first round pick and it's close to that Marleau trade, you definitely look at the one where the Marleau pick was. It definitely changed your perception of that trade a little bit. First, that's one thing. But with Kapanen, I think you would both agree that Kapanen definitely could have done a lot more. And I think there's definitely potential that he could have become a better player. But part of me wonders if off-ice issues and his stagnation offensively is what prevented him from staying in Toronto. Because I think that we both heard there was rumblings of potential off-ice friction. And, you remember back in February where he got scratched for a game against the Ottawa Senators. I wonder if that played a factor in that trade, because if it did, then it's sad to see him go that way,
Oh
because I
yeah.
think he could have done so much more.
Yeah. I think what it came down to was the Leafs lineup logjam in a way. The Leafs top 6 is kind of already set. And in terms of their bottom 6, they have replacements available. Of course, they just signed Barbanov, and
Yep.
Nick Robertson is also looking to make the jump to the NHL. And Kasperi Kapanen, even if he turns into, I mean, the thing is, he could have the potential to become a 30 goal scorer. But on a team like the Leafs, where that top 6 is kind of already, determined, he wouldn't get that shot either way to get those minutes to score 30 goals, even more possibly. So in a sense, the Leafs kind of had to hold him back from his full potential. And you can't always bank on that. Sometimes you have to be okay with giving that up. And he did become an expendable asset because of that. And I think the Penguins on their side, I think they're looking for, the Crosby effect, which is they need those top 6 forwards. They need someone to throw on Crosby's wing. And as we've seen lots of times in the past, Crosby can turn, I mean, I don't want to say anyone, but he could really turn a lot of wingers, even if they're not necessarily, if they don't necessarily have the potential to be a top 6 forward. He turns them into a top 6 forward. And I think they're hoping that Kasperi Kapanen can slot alongside either Crosby or Malkin and become that. So in a sense, I think he goes back to the fit, and the fit leading to him being expendable. And I think it worked out for Toronto. I think it really worked out for Toronto. I think the Penguins had to overpay there, but they're holding on to that last bit of window with the Crosby and Malkin core. And so just to recap, the trade was the Penguins received Kasperi Kapanen, Pontus Aberg, and Jesper Lindgren from the Leafs.
Yep.
And the Leafs received the 15th overall pick, Evan Rodriguez, who I do want to quickly talk about as well, and David Warsofsky and Philip Hollander. And I just want to break it down really quick. David Warsofsky, I think, is a kind of throw-in. I don't think he'll really make an impact for the Leafs at all. Even in the Leaf system, I don't think he's a focal point. Definitely the 15th overall pick is huge because it's a very deep draft, so that holds a lot more value than usual. I think Leafs fans should almost be very excited to see what they can draft, who the Leafs can draft with that 15th overall pick. And then I want to talk to you. What do you think Evan Rodriguez and Philip Hollander can bring? Because Hollander, he's an intriguing prospect, and he was, I think, arguably the second or third best prospect in the Penguin system before they traded him to the Leafs. And Evan Rodriguez is that capable fourth line center that can really bring a lot of depth. So I want to know what your thoughts are on those two players.
Well, first off, with Philip Hollander, I found it very interesting that the Leafs were really interested in him, drafting him back in 2018 before they ended up drafting Sean Durzi. 2018. I found that very intriguing, especially after the interview where he said they really wanted me back in 2018. Dubas said a lot of great things. Really excited to have me. I can't say enough that that's such a great first impression. Something along those lines. That's really telling for me because I think the Leafs really wanted him too. I don't think Hollander was a throw-in. I think Hollander plus the first was the main price to get Kasperi Kapanen to Pittsburgh. And I think the Leafs are going to be very happy with Hollander because he could potentially be an intriguing player that could fit into their middle 6 at some point. Maybe top 6, who knows? But the more prospect centers that you have, or wingers in this case, the better, because the Leafs could definitely use it, even though their wingers are super loaded. And as for Evan Rodriguez, listen, say what you will about Freddie, say what you will about Spezza, but the Leafs have to figure out what their plan is for the fourth line center role fast, because they cannot truck 3 centers. You can only really have 2, right?
Exactly.
Basically, what I'm getting at here is they need to make a decision like who's going to be on their fourth line next year. And I think Evan Rodriguez is an intriguing player in the sense that he can provide some value. And plus, he has the hometown factor as well, because he is from Toronto. So maybe he wants to play well because it's for his hometown team, and he's got a lot of talented players around him. Maybe much more so than when he was in Buffalo last year.
I like your point
Sorry,
about...
Jack Eichel.
I like your point about how they have to decide on their fourth line. And I think it plays a lot into this entire trade market in general. I think the Leafs, what they need to do is figure out exactly what they want their bottom six to be, because I think what we're seeing is that the Leafs are very rich in forwards right now, both, in their system and who are on the Leafs. And I think they need to really take in account who they want to keep and actually make those moves. Keep the depth pieces, but there are pieces that you can move. And I think that's what we're seeing with Andreas Johnsson and, that we've seen with Kasperi Kapanen and even Alex Kerfoot. And really take a glance at, do you want Jason Spezza still? Did you find your replacement for him? Do you want Frederic Gauthier still? And trying to save money down the line there for sure. So, and that kind of leads into my next question about, do you see the Leafs making any other trades? And I know you could fill us in a bit about the other Leafs trade rumors that's been going on right now.
Yeah. The answer is an emphatic yes. There's a lot of smoke, so that means the fire is not too far away. Like today, especially, we've been seeing a lot of juicy content in regards to Frederik Andersen's future. That's a player that a lot of fans are convinced is probably on the move. And today pretty much confirmed that, yes, he is most likely going to be traded. Where is he going to be traded to? We don't know. But it looks like Frederik Andersen's time as a Leaf is done. It sounds also to me that Andreas Johnsson and or Kerfoot are going to be on the move. Kerfoot's very interesting because I thought he played very well in the playoffs. But if they at least need a new look for their third line center, then sure, you got to trade Kerfoot. But the only way you trade is if you know for sure you're getting that third line center back. Mm-hmm. Because obviously the Leafs are going to miss Kadri for his talent alone and just his grittiness. But if Kerfoot gets to play with Robertson, he can play very well. But again, if you're going to move him, make sure you're getting that quality third line center back. But for Johnsson, I think it makes a lot of sense why he's going to get traded. Remember what we were talking about a few months ago about potentially trading Johnsson? What does Johnsson bring to the Leafs that stands out amongst the forwards? I honestly can't think of anything. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can.
And I mean, even to that point, we saw him miss a significant portion of the season, and even the first few games of the playoffs. And honestly, I don't think the team or I don't think fans really took notice because, we only really got to see him play in one game. And again, I don't think the Leafs really took a step back necessarily because of his absence. And I don't think they took a step forward when he re-entered the lineup necessarily.
Yeah, that's pretty much the telling sign for me. If Johnsson does not make or break your team's synchronization and your offensive playing abilities, then why is he still on the team? That's really what it comes down to. Is it loyalty? Is that sometimes he can play gritty? Is it that sometimes he can score the big goal? If you can't confidently say that he can provide something that's unique, then you should find a way to get some value off him while you still can. Because I think that contract is decent value. There's definitely some teams that could use some forward help in their middle six. That's where I think Johnsson fits in the best. And clearly, Robertson is too good to be sitting out a bunch of games. They want to see what Barbanoff can bring. Now's the time to move on from Andreas Johnsson. Exactly. So that's why I think it makes sense why he's in the rumor mill.
Exactly. So I want to keep this podcast moving a little quicker here, but
of course, yeah, we got a lot to talk about still.
On the last front of the trade rumors, the big one is Freddie Andersen. What do you want to see in a Frederik Andersen trade?
Yes, that's a question that Quinn asked us to do.
Okay, we'll just jump to that because I think it fits perfectly here, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Quinn basically asked, what do you think a Frederik Andersen trade looks like? And honestly, if you're going to trade Freddie, you better be getting a goalie back because there's no way the Leafs are going to be trading Andersen if they don't know for sure that they're getting back their new starter. Mm-hmm. Because that's the big thing. The bottom line is the Leafs need a new option in their starter crease. If you remember back after the Leafs got eliminated, I wrote a piece the very next day called "It's Time to Move On from Frederik Andersen." And while I'm glad he was able to provide his statistical consistency during the regular season, got the Leafs to the playoffs all those times, played well for the most part, statistically speaking, how can you trust Frederik Andersen to play well in a Game 7 when he can't even do that? And this year was a game 5, and the same story happened.
I think simply put is that kind of the Leafs need to change gears in some way. They need to make some sort of change. And it's glaring that the goalie situation is what, is a possibility for something that needs to be changed.
Yep.
And like they need a shakeup. And I mean, goaltending is one thing that needs a shakeup. So go ahead and do it. And again, I'm right with you that they need to get a goaltender in return, or I think they need to at least, you need to hope that Kyle Dubas has one of those UFA goalies lined up, if anything. If they decide to trade Frederik Andersen without getting a goalie in return, you need to hope that they have a goalie, a UFA goalie, maybe Robin Lehner, even, I don't know, Braden Holtby. I don't know. There's a number of options in the free agency market this offseason, but we'll have to see.
Basically,
100%.
about the goalies, just before we move on to the next one, is basically you're banking on the possibility that Lehner is not going to re-sign with Vegas. No way that's going to happen, because Lehner has played exceptionally well in these playoffs. And Holtby, I think, is for sure gone, but I think his asking price is going to be way too high for the Leafs to stomach, especially if they really want Pietrangelo, who I don't think is going anywhere. But simply put, there's just the best possible route the Leafs can get to upgrade their goalie position is through a trade. So it looks like to me, if the Leafs are going to be trading Frederik Andersen, the rumors are suggesting that Matt Murray is the guy the Leafs are going to be getting as their new starter. Because I just saw this tweet from Tom Hunter at Puck Don't Lie that said Darren Dreger is on TSN 1050, heavily implying that Dubas is all set to acquire Matt Murray if he ends up finding a good return for Freddie Andersen. So essentially, Leaf fans, get ready to meet your new starter in Matt Murray, because that's who the Leafs really want.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see if Dubas can fleece Jim Rutherford again.
We'll see what happens.
See.
I'm not going to say not good, but basically, we'll see what happens.
Last thing I want to say is, isn't it funny how Robin Lehner was technically a Maple Leaf for a very, very, very short amount of time? I mean...
Hey, let's make the reunion happen, guys. Longer than us.
We need that jersey swap.
Raise the banner.
But yeah, so that's what's going on in Leafland, and we have a lot to cover still. So honestly, I just want to quickly say, in terms of the NHL playoffs, there's been I just want to say that the teams that are already in the final 8 and the teams that are kind of up to enter the final 4 right now, it's just been a big surprise, and I think it's been a really interesting playoffs. We could potentially see the Stars advance, the Islanders advance, Tampa Bay already advanced, and and Vegas as well, and we could see them advance as well, and it's a pretty wacky playoffs, and I'm just hyped that we'll see another new Stanley Cup winner.
For me, the biggest surprise in these playoffs has been the Stars, and also by extension the Avalanche, because who would have guessed that it was the Stars that stopped the Avalanche from making what everyone thought was going to be for sure Avs versus Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. This has been a great year for Dallas. Dallas is a very well-built team. I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to them as much, just because they don't have as many stars. They don't play an offensively minded game. They're more defensively inept. But think of it this way: Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, and Alexander Radulov on their front end. Clefbaum, no, not Clefbaum. John Klingberg. A few other guys back there I can't remember.
Heiskanen.
And Ben Bishop. Yeah, Heiskanen. Yes.
Heiskanen. Huge.
Thank you for that. And Ben Bishop in net. That's a scary good team. I think that could be one of the Stanley Cup finalists this year. I really starting to believe that they can make it to the Stanley Cup finals. They are that good.
Oh yeah. And I want to bring attention to even Joe Pavelski. I know we've talked about him a lot. This season on the podcast. Talked about, I really do think he was, he is a big glue guy. I think he helps the team's chemistry a lot. We saw kind of the collapse that the Sharks suffered this season, and we also see now that he's playing really well with the with the Stars, and I think that's a big thing. And I think we definitely have to see what happens next. But I think he deserves a lot of props.
Absolutely. And the same goes, of course, for the Islanders, too. Like, obviously, Dallas has been playing well, but the Islanders continue to impress a lot of hockey fans. Even myself, I was not expecting them to make it out of that series against the Flyers. But lo and behold, they're up 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's speaks testament to Barry Tross's coaching. The team has bought into his game plan, and it's worked really well so far. My question is, though, is this team going to be able to stick together? Because one of the talking points throughout the season is how much money, how many players they have to sign, and how little money they have to spend. And especially now with a flat cap, I think the Islanders recognize that they don't have much time to make this thing work. So they have to, if they want to compete for a cup, this is probably their best chance.
For sure. We'll see how it plays out. These are very interesting playoffs, and a lot of surprises, and I think the conference finals will be surprising as well.
Next week, guys, we will make our predictions. Don't worry.
For sure.
We just don't have time.
Our original predictions got all messed up, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't even remember my predictions. Yeah. But go on.
But no, I want to move into a little bit of baseball. I know we neglect baseball a lot on this podcast. But the Blue Jays really look like they're going for it this year. They really look like they're going for it. And next week I do want to talk a lot more about baseball. But the MLB trade deadline just passed, and the Blue Jays made a number of moves. And I want to know your thoughts on that.
You know what? To be honest, I'm pretty surprised that this Blue Jays team is in the position that they're in. First of all, the Red Sox being in dead last is super surprising. I thought they could at least still compete, but not be dead last in the AL East and do worse than the Orioles, who had one of the worst seasons in a long time. But the Rays are in first. That's surprising. The Yankees are in second. And the Jays could theoretically be in contention for a wild card spot. So why not make the moves that they made at the deadline? Because, while it's not a full guarantee that they're going to make it, because I still think 2021 is their first real shot at it, I think it speaks testaments to the team that they've assembled so far. And honestly, like, it's been great to see. They find a way to come back in games. They're never fully out of it. The Stars are starting to play better. Bichette is the real deal. Vladdy's playing much better. Biggio has made leaps and bounds in his development. The starters have been good too. Like, it's been great this year, and I think it really speaks to the moves that they made at the deadline. And I think Blue Jays fans, you have every reason to be very excited about this team.
And I think the deals at the deadline, if anything, shows that exactly that they're going for it. They weren't any huge blockbuster deals really, but they were definitely deals that show that the Blue Jays are moving towards trying to fill gaps and become more depthful for a hopeful playoff run. I mean, especially, fixing up their starting pitching core. That's the main thing. And it looks like they're taking on a lot of, the players that are kind of projects in their own right, get them for a cheaper deal, and then hope that you can get them up to par with where the Blue Jays are trying to go. That's what you're trying to do as GM. And
Exactly.
And I think they're great deals. And yeah, I'm very excited to see how this Blue Jays team, the rest of the season pans out. Of course, it's a shortened season, so we talked about it before. They have to keep this momentum going without any slip ups, or else, with this shortened season, your playoff spot can be gone just like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now the Blue Jays are 18-16. They're currently playing the Miami Marlins right now in Miami. They are 2 games short of a wild card spot in the AL.
Mm-hmm.
Does this Blue Jays team make the playoffs as a wild card?
I think it's very possible. I think it's very, very possible. Again, it's just about getting those games to go your way. I think it really is that. And again, their pitching staff was the big gaping issue heading into the season, and these deals really show that that's what they're going for, to improve in that front. Again, they didn't make any blockbuster trades for any stars or anything, but they picked up some depthful pieces that will help them go for the long run.
I agree with you there. I think that the playoffs are most definitely a possibility. But if they don't make it, it'll be very close. And I think that is going to tell a lot about the state of the Blue Jays. They're definitely on the right track. And I think, like I said earlier, their 2021 projection is looking pretty good right now. That's all I'm going to say.
For sure. So here, I think we will take a quick break and then head into our NBA redraft, which we're finally re-continuing after taking a break from that. So let's take a short break and then be right back.
We just had our water. We've got to stretch our legs a little bit, and we're back and ready for the 2013 NBA redraft. And I have to say, I took a quick look at the draft and what we're projected our picks are going to be. It is going to be a lot different than how things actually turned out in real life.
Oh yeah, I mean, quick little refresher on the 2013 NBA draft. I can vividly remember watching this draft on TV. Anthony Bennett was the first overall pick. And I forgot who the commentator was, but I just remember when he got selected and on TV, they went, whoa. Nobody saw that coming. Like, they really didn't see that coming. And, I mean, we saw him. I mean, I had high hopes because he was the first Canadian to go first overall. That was huge. Mm-hmm. So, of course, us here in Canada, we were rooting for him, but and unfortunately, his career did not go as planned. He was off the Cavs in a couple of years. I remember he signed with the Raptors and then was demoted to the D League, the Raptors 905, and then couldn't even make the cut on that team. And so I was telling you before, if we really ran a full redraft, I don't even know if he'd get drafted, even in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's such a shame his career didn't work out, but then again, it was cool to have him on the Raptors for a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It was cool. But anyways, we'll start with our draft. And do I have the first overall pick?
Yes, you do. And I can already tell you right now, you have the easiest pick of all
I
time.
do. And just a refresher for anyone who's just joining us for the first time, we've been doing these redrafts for the last few episodes. Quite a while. We did 7 NHL redrafts, and now we're doing 7 NBA redrafts from 2010 up till 2017. And we kind of alternate picks and kind of form our own teams that way. And we just do the top 10 selections in the draft. And with that, we'll go right away. So I have the first overall pick. And I don't even think I have to talk much about this guy. I don't think we have to analyze him much. But I'm going to take the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Future Raptor, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
We'll see. I mean, our Raptors fans are hoping, but definitely. I mean, I think he's definitely going to win MVP this season. He won it last season, so it would be back to back. And he's the defensive player of the year this season. And he'd be in very big, like, important company with that historic feat of winning defensive player of the year and winning MVP. I think only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Michael Jordan who's won that before. I think I have to double check that, but yeah. I mean, again, I just want to say it's insane that he fell to 15th. Obviously, he wasn't as scouted as well. Obviously playing in Greece, and it's crazy because I was watching some Mark Cuban interviews, for the Mavericks. He was the owner of the Mavericks, and he apparently really wanted Giannis Antetokounmpo, and we know he always loves taking his chances on international players. That's how they landed Doncic again, Dirk Nowitzki in the past.
Yep.
And obviously, a lot of teams don't look at it that way, and he slid to 15th overall. Of course, he was looked at as a project, and I remember in 2013 he was that really slim, skinny, tall guy, and he really worked hard and really he was a really, really raw prospect, like as raw as you can get a prospect. And he completely shot up to the top of his ceiling. And to say that he still hasn't reached his full potential is pretty scary. But it's going to be insane. I mean, what can you say? Already one of the best players in the NBA, and can arguably finish in, at the end of his career, could arguably finish in the greatest of all time race.
Just to add to that, but basically how you're saying raw prospect. If there's anything that has made NBA teams realize that they can take on a raw prospect and they have the potential to draft themselves the next Giannis. That's how impressive his turnaround has been. Like you probably remember his rookie season, like how different of a player he was compared to where he is now. It's crazy to me watching those highlights back. Like that is not the same. How is that the player that becomes an MVP? It's crazy, but it's
Yeah,
impressive as well.
it's a
Like
crazy. Yeah, his
remember when he
development
had
is crazy.
remember when he had like the buzz cut hair too?
Oh yeah, that's what he came into the league with.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's been quite the turnaround for him, and I'm really glad to see that it's worked out
he
perfectly for
really
him.
put on a lot of muscle. Like he's ripped now, compared to when he entered the league. And I mean, he really worked on his shooting. His shooting was pretty good before, but he really worked on that and his spacing, and really took those next steps to adapt to the NBA. So yeah, that's my first overall pick, and I think we should keep it moving. But yeah,
The second overall pick for me is going to be the same second overall pick that happened in real life. No hesitation, Victor Oladipo.
nice pick, nice pick. Victor Oladipo. Yeah, I mean, what's there to say about him? His first few years in the league weren't up to par to his expectations as a second overall pick, but then he really did explode, especially after getting traded especially after getting traded to the Indiana Pacers, and that kind of became his team. And yeah, I definitely say he's a star in this league.
Absolutely. And I think he fits in very well on that Pacers team. It's unfortunate for them that they got swept by the Heat, I want to say.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But honestly, this team is still good enough to be at least in the playoffs. But they need a few more pieces. That's besides the point. But Oladipo himself, great player, excellent fit on that Pacers team. He's been bouncing quite a lot in his career so far, but I think he's fit in nicely on that Pacers team.
He went from Orlando to OKC to Indiana, and I think he is the face of that Indiana team now, especially after Paul George left. So
Absolutely.
all good there. And
What do you got at 3?
so at 3, I'm gonna take Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz.
Good
And
choice.
I think
Defensive specialist.
a defensive specialist, and honestly one of the best, if not the best, defensive player in the league. I believe is he? How many times did he win defensive player of the year? Is it 2-time?
I'm gonna say that maybe
Let
3.
me just double
I'm
check
not
that
sure.
really quickly right now. He's a 2-time defensive player of the year. So when you have a player of that caliber, only so few players have won it multiple times. And as we've seen in that first round series, he was very, very solid on both ends of the court, really. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong, especially when defense wins championships, and I really believe that.
Absolutely. And the Jazz are very happy with that pick. Don't get us wrong. Like we were talking about earlier about the Jazz potentially having to make some change to their roster, but I think one of the things they don't have to worry about is him, because defense is a huge factor in today's NBA. And I think the Jazz identity is partially because of Gobert. Gobert plays an excellent game, and I think his game is super valuable in today's NBA. So you definitely need to have more players like him. And I think it's great that he's landed on a great spot in Utah.
Oh yeah, isn't it interesting that he was originally drafted by the Nuggets and then traded to the Jazz on draft night? Could have been a different look at that first round series.
That is a very interesting thing. Now you think about it, I didn't even realize that. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. But who you got at 4? We'll keep going.
I'd say he's one of the most underrated second best players in the
Second
NBA.
options, yeah.
Second option, that's what I meant to say. Portland's got a great one in this guy. Pretty much spoiled it. CJ McCollum.
CJ McCollum, 3J McCollum. He has the most made threes in this entire draft class. I think he's definitely a specialist in that, but definitely, I mean, if we've seen anything from Portland, other than Damian Lillard, who's been the biggest story of Portland, CJ McCollum has been like one of the best sidekicks in the league. And that duo has been crazy, and they've been fitting together almost perfectly. And yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with that pick.
I'm looking at the stats right now on Basketball Reference for the 2013 draft. What I find crazy is that CJ McCollum has the second most points out of anyone in this draft class, second only to Giannis, of course. But it's crazy. Like 18.5 points per game through his career up to this point. I'd say that's a really good pick at 10th overall.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. So with that, I'm gonna head out on to my fifth. Are we at fifth? Fifth overall pick?
Yeah, we're at 5th.
And I'm gonna go with a big over here, and I'm gonna take Steven Adams.
Excellent choice. A really good player on. Is he still in Oakland?
OKC?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
All right. Yeah. Excellent pick. He's been great.
He has been great. He's been a very I just want to pull up some of his stats, but he's been a very, very solid big man for the OKC Thunder. Pretty much his entire time. I mean, again, they've been really depending on him a lot more, and I think he's really broken out these last few seasons. And just that solid big man that you really can't go wrong with having on your team. I think he brings a lot to the floor.
Here's another thing. That was the pick that the Raptors originally had in that draft. I always wonder, would the Raptors have taken him if they still had the 12th overall pick in 2013?
I mean, you gotta wonder. But then you also gotta wonder if Toronto had that 12th overall pick, could they have chosen Giannis?
Ugh. Don't do this to me.
He was taking just three slots afterwards.
Oh man, a lot of what ifs. This is a great draft for what ifs.
It is. But yeah, I take Steven Adams 5th, and let's see who you got at 6th.
Here's a player that I think people might get a little upset at if I take him at number 6. But truth be told, he's definitely come into his own the last couple of years, and I think he could definitely be one of the better point guards in the NBA, and that is Dennis Schroeder.
Dennis Schroeder, nice. Yeah, I mean, what's there to say about Dennis Schroeder? He's been very good. He's been playing very well. His especially the last few seasons for the OKC Thunder. Look at that, 2 OKC Thunder going back to back. But
there you go.
I think he's really found his spot with the Thunder actually. And not to say he hasn't played well with the Hawks, which he has, which he spent most of his career with. But yeah, I mean, I think he's been really effective for the Thunder, and I think he's really made a name for himself.
I wonder if Atlanta's going to regret moving him when they did, because he still has a lot of freeway in his career.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think he can still be an effective point guard for years to come. So
his best offensive season was his last season with Atlanta when he averaged 19.4 points per game. So OKC got a good steal there when they picked him up. And yeah, very
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more, man. Go to number 7. Let's go to number 7.
So with number 7, I am going to go a little off my board here that I originally had, but I'm gonna take Otto Porter Jr.
Excellent pick. Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Oh yeah, he plays for the Bulls now, but majority of his career has been with the Wizards, and yeah, I mean, just a really good, especially for depth wise, just a really good player. You can't really go wrong with him. Last season, especially his first with Chicago, he had kind of his breakout season, averaging 17.5 points per game. And I mean, he did only play a few. His season was kind of cut short, but he was very effective with Chicago. You saw he kind of improved as soon as he joined Chicago, and you really want to see what else he can do now that he's in Chicago.
Absolutely. And yeah, like he's played very well on the Wizards for all those years there. Overall, it's been a great career for him. Against the Raptors, if you remember, in 2015 and more specifically 2018, he was quite the nuisance, like a player that was like you were scared to see him go off offensively, because I remember in 2018 he was like very effective. So a great pick for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. And now you have the next pick.
I'm glad that this player is still available at this point in the draft, and I will gladly take him. And that is Robert Covington.
Nice. I had him there as well. I mean, I'll let you explain your pick there.
I like to have some great basketball players on my team. Sorry, I'm just not really thinking right now. And Robert Covington has been a good all-around player for a number of years. Like one of the most underrated players in the
Oh
NBA.
yeah.
I'm surprised not many people talk about him. And that was a pretty interesting trade that he got dealt away from Minnesota. Now he's on the Rockets, and he's playing a big part of their team being able to get to Game 7 in these playoffs. Great player. Honestly, I'm surprised he hasn't been looked at more. Like I said, he's one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and I wish I learned more about him. But I'm really happy with my pick.
Nice, nice. So, what number are we at? 9?
9.
Okay. I'm gonna take a Canadian pride and joy here. I'm gonna take Kelly Olynyk from the Miami Heat. Oh yeah.
Nice.
You thought? Imagine I was gonna say Anthony Bennett. But yeah. He's from Toronto, and he's been a very good just role player through his entire career. Of course, he played with Boston before, and now he plays with the Heat, and he's really adapted to the Heat's. I think he just really fits with the Heat a lot more than he did with the Celtics, to be honest. And although he's kind of taken a backseat offensively to how he's been playing in Boston, he still played very well. Last season he put up his highest points per game average at 11.5 points per game, and this season he's been his averages are really good, and obviously they're finding a lot of success overall as a team in Miami, and a lot of the credit has to go to him and how he's kind of taken that role in Miami and rolled with it.
Oh, absolutely. And I agree. I remember when back in his early days as a Celtic, during that transitional phase for the team, he was a player that always intrigued me. Player like, I wonder if the Raptors would benefit from getting this guy. And he has developed really well on the Celtics, of course, and now on the Heat. He's playing a major role in the team, already off to the second round, playing off against the Bucks, and that could be a very interesting series. Like if they win that one, who knows what their ceiling is. And Olynyk plays a big part in that. And I think if there's anything, if we want to talk about underrated players, Covington is one of them. Olynyk is another.
For sure.
Did I say it right, by the way?
What, Olynyk?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you have the final pick in the draft. So let's wrap it up.
I basically the player that is perfect to round out this draft. Probably could have taken him earlier, but I'm going to take him now. Tim Hardaway Jr.
Exactly who I had at 10th overall as well. I think our draft boards have been pretty similar, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I just want to wrap it up super quickly. But again, just another solid player. We saw when he joined the Knicks. A lot of people, when he was drafted by the Knicks, I remember a lot of people thought he would be a really bright spot, and he had a lot of potential. Of course, he's kind of developed more into a role player here. But yeah, I mean, he, especially during these playoffs, I think we've seen that he has been a good fit with the Dallas Mavericks, and it's going to be interesting to see how he rolls with that squad. But I think the Dallas Mavericks have a good piece in him right now.
Here's another question, kind of like the Hawks, but I think more so with the Knicks. Are they going to regret trading him away? Wasn't he part of the package with Porzingis?
Let me double check that. Let me double check actually.
Because if he is, then that's another blemish on that trade for the Knicks.
He was traded along with Trey Burke. Again, another big piece for the Mavericks right now. Courtney Lee and Kristaps Porzingis to the Mavs.
I'm telling you right now, if the Mavs win a championship in the next 3 years, they're gonna enact a statue of James Dolan, for thanking him for gifting the Mavericks all the pieces they needed.
Man, the Knicks are just a mess. They just need a lot of help. But I think with that we will wrap up our redraft. That was a good redraft. A lot of jumps, a lot of different results there from the real draft. But yeah, I really like that, and we'll have the 2014 draft next week.
Absolutely, yes. If you guys like the format, if you guys want to make some suggestions for future episodes, let us know. we'll tell our socials later, but please let us know what you think of this format. We obviously love it. We've been doing it for now a few weeks now, and it's sad that we're almost done with these drafts. I always look forward to them.
Yeah, for sure. They're definitely really fun to do, and it really just puts things in perspective. I mean, all these years later. But I think we'll close out the episode very soon. We just have a couple questions to ask from the listeners.
Yes.
Again, I'll just plug it in now. If you want to send us any questions to answer on the podcast, you can tweet us. Me at Matt_Rodrigo_.
And me at the Leafs IMO.
And also, our podcast account on Twitter at Behind the Net Pod. So tweet or message any one of those accounts, and we will get back to you, or we will answer them on the next podcast. But anyways,
and we're gonna try some fun on that account too. So definitely follow for that as well.
So you want to read us the first question, and I can read us the second one, which we just got very recently.
Yeah, you can. I read the first question already, so you can answer this next one.
Okay, let me just pull it up here. So Quinn, this is from our good friend Quinn Storm on Twitter, and he is asking what are 3 moves you would like if you're Kyle Dubas. What are 3 moves you make this offseason?
Okay, I'll go first. I think it'll be very quick. First, you make a move to sign Radko Gudas. Gudas, I feel, is one of those players that Leaf fans have been clamoring and hoping that he gets on the Leafs one day, and I think he'd make total sense for that back end.
Me included.
They need that physical presence on their back line. And he's a very good player. People overlook that because they think, oh, big, tough defenseman. Very, very much Roman Polak. No, he's a very good player. I think he'd fit very well on this Leafs team. That's one move. Number 2, make a move for starting goaltender. Whether that be signing Leonard or Holtby, if you can somehow convince him to take a cheap deal, or making a trade for Matt Murray, they have to get the starter. This is this time to do that. And number 3, you knew this was coming. Trade for Blake Coleman.
That would be your number one.
It's number one on my list.
Actually, yeah.
Trade for Blake Coleman. Get the Lightning to give him up again.
So mine is very similar. For me, it is. I'll word it in different ways though, but for me, yeah, Radko Gudas he's the main free agent I definitely want to see in a Leafs uniform. I've wanted him for a couple seasons now. Again, he's a really good defensive defenseman, which is exactly what the Leafs need. So take a shot at him. I think he's exactly what the Leafs need to sharpen up their blue line. Second, I'm gonna say in terms of the draft, I know that Kyle Dubas. I know that the Leafs could dangle that 15th overall pick a little, but I think I actually think I would like them to see. I would like to see them actually use that 15th overall pick. So for me, I want to see them use it. Maybe if Askarov is available, maybe you can get a starting goalie there. I don't know, a starting goalie of the future. There's an option. And then my number 1 is, same as you. I would, explore the trade market with Freddie Anderson. I don't know if Matt Murray is the one, but definitely maybe explore the free agent market. Definitely I think there needs to be a shakeup there, and definitely get Freddie Anderson off the books and bring someone new in. If that's Matt Murray, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of bringing in Matt Murray, as opposed to, Robin Lehner or even a Marc-Andre Fleury. But we'll just see what Dubas has planned in terms of that. But definitely I think getting Freddie Anderson out of a Leafs uniform, we all love him, but I think that shakeup is needed.
Yeah. A few honorable mentions. If they don't get Radko Gudas, Dylan DeMello would be a great option, a backup plan, and Mark Borwitzki would be excellent as well. I think any one of those 3 defensemen would be a great fit on this Leafs team. If you can somehow get all 3, golden.
And we got another question just recently from Matt Roberts, mroberts85, and he asks, I know we've talked about this in a previous podcast, but again, thank you. I think you just followed, so thank you if you're listening. Thank you for listening to our episode now. But is Bruce Boudreau as Leafs assistant coach going to be a thing or no?
I still think so. But again, it's going to come down to the Leafs. Because as we talked about in the previous episodes, Bruto is definitely interested in the position. in the sense that if it doesn't work out for him getting a coaching spot, then that's where he'll go. There are some openings now. The Capitals need a new coach. The Kraken still need their coach. Who knows who else is going to get fired in the offseason. But if Bruce Boudreau doesn't get a coaching gig and the Leafs come calling for him again, then I think we could be seeing Bruce Boudreau behind the bench and as for the Leafs.
Yeah, I'm more on the side that it's not going to happen, mainly because I think a coach of his caliber is definitely going to hold out for the head coach position. I mean, he doesn't want to take that step back. So in the end, I don't think he will, but I know in an ideal situation, I mean, yeah, he would. Who wouldn't want to come back to your hometown, even for a diminished role? I think that's what's going through everyone's head. So there's a possibility in that front, but I don't think it's going to happen. But we will see.
We'll see for sure. I think it'd be great if he does come back to Toronto, but you never know.
For sure.
One other thing I wanted to just talk about quickly before we wrap things up. There was a big trade in hockey today. Jake Allen was dealt from the St. Louis Blues to the Montreal Canadiens. Very quickly, what are your thoughts?
I mean, for me, I think it really is Montreal trying to, tighten up their goalie situation, especially as for a backup goalie. But that's an expensive backup goalie. So I honestly don't know exactly what they're planning in Montreal. I know there's been a lot of pieces moving here and there, especially about, Max Domi, is he on the move? He just switched agents. And I know, but if one thing's for sure, I really, 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 really doubt Carey Price would be out in any capacity. I think he will retire as a Montreal Canadian. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but it is bringing a lot of question marks about what they're trying to do there. But if at surface, if it is an upgrade to their backup position, I think it's a good move for Montreal.
Absolutely. I think what this move is really for Montreal, they need a new backup in the sense that they want to give Carey Price some rest. He's getting up there in age. He definitely played a big part in them making it to the first round of the playoffs. Unfortunately, they ran into a very good Flyers team. But this Montreal team is still very good, and I think if Jake Allen can play good minutes, like good performances in the net when he's called upon, that definitely makes a big difference because that Montreal team came dangerously close to missing the qualifying round this year. And who knows what difference we were going to be talking about if that's the case.
Yeah, and
same thing with the Buffalo Sabres.
It's obviously you think, it's an expensive backup goalie, right? Like, what are they doing getting such an expensive backup goaltender? But hey, when you're a team that you have the cap space and you were able to exceed expectations. I mean, let's just face the facts. The Montreal Canadiens were, a way cheaper team than the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they did get farther than the Toronto Maple Leafs did. So I think there's a little confidence in that front over there in Montreal. And hey, I mean, when you have that flexibility, I mean, and you think you have that confidence in your team and you have that cap space, I mean, might as well go ahead and put a little more money into a hole you have.
And basically from the Blues side, just to wrap this conversation, they clearly were doing this to give them some more financial flexibility to be able to sign Pietrangelo. And we kind of, like I said earlier, we obviously would love to see Pietrangelo in the Leaf uniform, but there's no way. And I think it's pretty much a guarantee at this point now he's going to resign for the Blues to whatever amount of money he wants. So for them, good for them. They figured out their cap situation. They're going to sign one of their most important players. Now they need to find a backup.
For sure. So we'll see what happens there. And I think we'll close out this podcast here. Again, thanks for listening. You can follow us on Twitter for me at Matt_Rodrigo_ and
at me at the Leafs IMO. You can catch your work at the Leafs Nation. Matthew's hopefully going to get a gift job somewhere. Knock on wood for that one.
Yep, looking around for that. But yeah, I do tweet out Raptors gifts, clips on my Twitter. Kind of taking a step back the last few days in solidarity with everything that's been going on. But we'll see. Yeah.
And don't forget to follow our Twitter, our podcast's Twitter account. Like I said earlier, we're going to have some fun stuff planned. It is Behind the Net Pod. Of course, we had one fun tweet the other day. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more where that came from.
And once again, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Peace.